We'll take a quick question before we break for lunch.
I'm Garg from the Department of Information Technology. My basic premise is that we are a software service industry as such in India. And we need to move towards the products, software products, where entrepreneurship and startups are the brain behind it. Now the question is, how does free software movement help entrepreneurship? One, that too in technology innovation. And innovation as a name as such compose of business into it. The second part is, don't you feel that the preamble of software patenting as such is right, but the content is poor?
Start with the second part.
By talking about no patent for software because of some bad patents being granted is not the premise for absolutely, for altogether abolishing software patents.
I'm not sure why you think that 20-year state-granted monopolies are good for the software industry. In the first place, it's patent, isn't it? To use the word in its correct form, meaning open or obvious. It's patent, isn't it, that 20 years is a ridiculous term for anything having to do with software? If you said to me that you think that there's a use for 2-year software patents, we'd have a conversation. If you say that there's a use for 20-year software patents, I have no idea what you're talking about. The second thing I don't quite understand is why we ought to think in terms of statutory monopolies over anything other than the entire unit, the program. By severing it up into patentable techniques, you've essentially guaranteed what the analyst would call an anti-commons problem. You have an assembly of rights problem in order to make each program. Years ago, Richard and I had a conversation about what software patents might conceivably be a good idea. And Richard thought about it for a while and he said, well, you know, the guy who said that you can use 3 consecutive XORs to exchange the contents of 2 registers without a 3rd intermediate location of storage, maybe he had a patentable idea. That's a little bit like the zipper. It's so obvious when you see it, but it's so ingenious to think it up. And I said, yeah, but that guy was working, what, about 1955? So his patent's expired now. There are probably uniquely inventive ideas about computer programming. And they result in something that you could look at and say, that's an entire work and somebody invented it. And maybe it is correct then to say that he ought to have an 18-month-long patent on it. But that's not the patent law anybody in the world is asking for. Nobody on the side that believes in patenting is asking for anything other than unbelievably lengthy monopolies on unbelievably small parts of the process of programming computers. And nobody on our side needs an 18-month patent in order to make things happen. Let's look at what has actually happened in computer technology over the last 50 years and decide how much of it happened because of patenting. Windows, oh dear, that's dumbing down all the stuff that was made before it existed, right? Windows is X Windows minus the network, because Mr. Gates didn't know that networks existed, because, you know, there are certain properties of mental life that people like Mr. Gates have, and they have to do with isolation from other human beings. So he took the world of unpatented network-aware windowing systems that existed before, and he took the network out of it and created a dumb client-side thing that throws square frames up on the screen. Now that's supposed to be patentable. But of course it relies upon all that much more interesting, much more complicated, much more thoughtful work that pre-existed the existence of Windows in the first place. Same is true, of course, with all the Office franchise patenting, which is really Xerox PARC technology written in a pre-patented era, actually physically purchased by Microsoft. If you do the same thing with respect to lots of other patents in the world of software, you'll find the same basic problem. The patent is not a sign of innovation. The patent is actually a historical memorial of previous unpatented innovation. The reason that that happened is pretty simple. Patent offices are good at searching if they are searching patents. And as long as a field of technology has been inside patent scope throughout its existence, the patents on file in the office are a very good record of the history of the technology. Sewing machines, for example, famously patented first in the United States by Mr. Howe and then by Mr. Singer. If you go and read the patents in the United States Patent Office, you will see a total record of the history of sewing machine technology. And by examining the patents, it's pretty easy to discover what is novel and unobvious. But when a field has been out of patent scope for a long time at the beginning of its history, and then falls into patent scope, searching patents does you no good. You have to search open literature unorganized into the categories of the office. When, as was documented in the film, the United States Patent Office began entertaining applications in the 1990s, we were already in the third generation of computer technology. I have a basic rule of thumb, which is that everything in the world of computers has been invented 3 times. Once in the mainframe era, once in the mini-computer era, and once in the microcomputer era. The 3rd time, it was patentable. That raised an enormous problem. The problem was that the examiners, who were overwhelmed from the very beginning, because there were very few really talented computer scientists in the patent offices in the early 1990s. They got there later. They had to master an enormous literature that had been outside scope since the beginning. The records of the patent offices were of no help to them, and they had very poor documentation from the people filing, who were, of course, doing everything they could to make the old appear to be the new. The record of patenting in software contains very few innovations, not in the sense that you would expect. Not particularly if you were used to the history of patent law in the 19th and 20th centuries, when physical objects of innovative design and operation were being submitted to the office. My guess is that under no particular construction is patenting part of the reason for startups to succeed in innovating in the economy. You asked, I think, a different question really at the beginning, which is, how are people going to succeed in innovating using free software? I'm not sure I understand why that would be a problem to see. The browser? Is somebody going to make something better than the browser? And why would they have any more concern for money this time than they had last time? The browser was manufactured in academic life first. It was manufactured in nonprofit life second. It was manufactured by Netscape third. And now is back solely in the world of free software because there is no unfree browser of any significance left in the world, right? The same proposition begins when you look at all the other innovations over the last 10 years that really significantly altered the way people use digital technology. Giving people the code to read is not a problem for innovators. What are they going to do? Take it and sell a copy of it that they don't understand? That's fine. You're the service business.
Patent doesn't stop you from giving the code to read.
No, on the contrary, you would expect software patent.
Free source code and repeat it.
No, you would expect, wouldn't you, that the patent disclosures for software should be operating source code. It's in fact, if you simply required that step, you would eliminate a great deal of uncertainty about what's being patented in the first place, right? But that's not the way patent systems work, because patents don't patent programs, they patent claims. And you can't give a source for the claim because you're patenting a technique, right? Address resolution in dynamically compiled languages, right? Look at the patents on which Oracle is suing Google at the moment and see how many of those you think could be disclosed in source code.